mean, generally, I've not seen musical moments that stand out and are pretty dazzling, especially when you get deeper into the movie and the more fantastic.
So to watch this, I was like, oh, I would have been wildly lost. A lot of the Lin-Manuel Miranda before in my life, I've never heard an interview, but when he was doing
In Hamilton, I've heard a lot of the music.
Yeah.
And oddly enough, while I did enjoy
I thought she was fantastic in this film. I'm not gonna sit here and go, which one do I prefer? God, why didn't I ever think of that? Anyway, Mary Poppins Returns, guys. Look, you've seen the trailer. I'm not really paying attention to the lyrics. I was still like able to enjoy what I was
Coming off of his character.
Rachel, leave the video.
Need to stop working hard, Dad. It wasn't that.
We joined the story at a point where things seem pretty.
Walked through the door. The audience applauded.
Yeah.
They were memorable, but still very charming. Charming. Just, you know, wasn't amazing.
Painting, they go into a pot, which is essentially the painting sequence.
Yeah, and again, to be fair, you know, they do the thing that they've done in so many
stuff, but when they do the like 2D animation stuff and some of the bigger, more on-screen.
I know, but
It takes place in modern day England. You guys can subscribe to the Reject Nation. Click that notification. In the first Mary Poppins, though, you just won't really appreciate this film.
To make things like this that don't have to be locked. I was looking forward to the most because I like him with all the lyrics and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So.
And Dick Van Dyke's in here.
oh my god, oh, Mary Poppins.
Ever a few days ago.
That's crazy.
Stand out way more than the actual music.
No.
So I was very distracted whenever he was doing which is ruining the trailer.
You know, it is a little.
Songs,
I don't either.
but I remember the sequences better.
Yeah, like, you know, just the energy into this movie. It was great.
I mean, I found him very charming. He was one of the elements. I'm John Humphrey.
And I'm Adorkable Rachel.
And last night we saw Mary Poppins return.
Mary Poppins.
The movie starts out really energetically, and that carries across the whole film.
So, like, it's very unique and distinct in some ways, but then it's also insanely familiar.
The first Mary Poppins, like,
Time.
Yeah. Tap dancing.
Reliant.
This is kind of
Different. Turns. Do you want
At all about Mary Poppins, I think you're gonna really have a good time at this movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
the highly anticipated movie of December? Forget
Got the same feeling here too. But he was, again, still charming, and I still give him props for bringing
Christopher Robin on us. He hates being an adult.
But first of all, you guys were there in the audience that we were with when Dick Van Dyke was.
It all with Mary Poppins, so in a way, I wish this would open up the door.
And it's so funny because the movie, in so many ways, is so charming, but at the same time, yeah, there is just a musical with big name stars who can.
Great job. I think if you're a fan of if you're a big fan of the first Mary Poppins movie, and I think if you're a fan of musicals in general, these kind of films, I think you're really gonna like this movie a lot. There's a lot other than Emily Blunt.
And you will definitely, I think, enjoy this. But I think, as Greg said, like, if you haven't seen
sort of this energy of the kind of movie they're trying to make.
This is really.
she's very strict, and then she'll deny everything, like when you say, like, oh, but you 10.
Kind of thing, I think you'd really like it.
Yeah, if you are a musical fan, or
Like, it was one of those things where someone who
Got Adorkable Rachel's YouTube channel, and also download and follow us on
a lot of this kind of stuff was in the past movie. Very much, we've seen this so many times.
they have to the house.
Yeah.
And so you have this very specific clock, which gives it a more sense.
Just did that. It's just like, I don't know what you're talking
Yeah, it's
about.
kind of a dick.
for Disney using all these resources that they clearly still have.
There was something about when he's not singing that was distracting to me. That's my one.
Zombie Mary Poppins comes back.
Sequences in the film.
Big
the
thing.
problem too. Yeah.
There's always been this.
So that way they, before you fall Rachel, can have money to pay off the loan.
That would just be that movie.
Similar to the first Mary Poppins.
As a story, you know, like we've said, it's pretty familiar, especially if you're familiar.
50 years, yes.
Well, it's funny how after they come back over 50 years, they do a movie that's almost.
And at least the couple songs where that appears, it was a nice breath of fresh air.
Did he just say fresh air? Different from the first one. There's a real specific ticking time.
In this, and he was.
Oh, I was worried.
I couldn't help but be like, oh, look at him. He's just so happy
It's
to
like
be
cute,
here.
but worrisome.
One of my favorite musical moments because one of the big stakes for.
I think he does a
think
great
so, yeah.
job in the film, though.
And Wish Us Things toward the beginning of the movie. That's actually.
They were
when
so
nuts.
excited to see him. If you don't know, Dick Van Dyke with Mary Poppins, especially with like the first movie, you don't always know what her deal is. Like familiar in some ways.
It's the definition of same, but
help but just love her. And she can sing. Another thing I really appreciate about this movie, and there's a lot of beats that are hit. Yeah, and what's so
was pretty like
Fair
a
enough.
lot of the time. But again, he had one of my favorite musical numbers in the whole movie.
lines. Every line was delivered the same way.
No, I mean, it was really good, not super
It kind of is about the dad in the end, like the arc of it all, too.
Well,
beautiful, but yeah, visually, it's so
Visually, it's
memorable.
then the problem arises. recognizes. It doesn't seem as much like, oh, you've just worked yourself into a hole over just the imagination overall, the cast overall, and the tradition of...
He kind of does, yeah. But again, he can sing and he can really sell it. It's more like, oh, he is like worrying too much and maybe he just needs to just...
Choreography dance moves that I remember the most come from one of his... I'm not the biggest Rob Marshall fan in general, but I really...
Humming any of the tunes.
Yeah.
Not even the last one, which was like so lively and so...
Cast that sort of stuck out and becomes very apparent amid the period piece.
Beautiful. It's
It's
very
gorgeous.
beautiful. Yeah, it is. A lot of energy to it. There's a lot of imagination to it. I really love trailers. You know what Mary Poppins is about. She's back in action, okay? There you go. Plot description out of the way.
To me, I hate to say
Is in his early 90s.
Oh, it shows.
It does, but he was...
Bell, make sure to check the movie. And I think the supporting cast is also really good. There was no characters of the former character. There's a lot of people who are just Julie Andrews.
the time is now having to...
This one was really, really well done.
Well, and I think a couple at least...
Great about Emily Blunt's performance.
For this one. I think hold for laughter. Right now, musical numbers do. But I still think there's a lot of fun to be had. Like, even when I was kind of about to lose their house, so they have 5 days to find a certificate of shares to the bank.
Many movies where like he has a wife that's
much to appreciate in the way that they bring people show up.
Stardust at people where you can...
and it's the longest it's been for a sequel ever.
Move.
It is kind of a dick move a bit, but there's always this...
Hello there, Reject Nation. I'm Greg Alba. I think that Emily Blunt's portrayal really stands on its own. Get Aquaman. It's all about Mary Poppins returning, guys. Listen,
movie, you can't deny that Cockney
I
accent.
did enjoy this movie. I think Emily Blunt does a great job in this
Whole thing within the first movie, like, while Dick Van Dyke is wonderful and very charming and very...
You mentioned the song, the best
significant screen time. The ticking time clock to it is that the
ensemble-based musical numbers. I really started to appreciate the tradition this movie.
clock to this movie, where the first one...
Over 50.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really think that if you haven't seen... Yes! Oh, I never mentioned that.
Yeah. It's
That's
really
a
important.
great thing to mention.
No.
And he doesn't spend time with his children, but to be fair, he sings a song.
Trailers, a lot of them are micro sketches, actually. I believe Rachel's on there as well, right?
Yes, is that it's a movie music.
Like, you know, instead of going into the... That was a unique element to its beats. But not like totally unique, but different.
On from the last
Yeah.
movie too, even though, so to be fair, it's not bodied that really well.
Yeah.
Strict and stern, but also very charming and sweet, and just you just can't.
This element where Michael is all gone.
Mystical elements start to come out.
Yeah.
I wasn't crazy about
That I really loved in this film. I think that if you don't see the first one, you won't really care.
In the movie.
I don't love this movie. I don't dislike this movie. I enjoyed it. I did
of the songs where
it was being put in front of my face the entire time.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
No, it's-
I'd recommend if you're a fan of this.
and I don't know if that will be the...
I find it
Yeah.
very difficult to believe. I had only seen the first one for the first time.
A little teary listening to that song. It was in the beginning of the movie too. Also,
He doesn't really have.
is when you get people who just can't sing and they're only there because of the star power. And
Post your own reactions too. At a very specific time in England. It's
Yeah.
he's exactly out of Christopher Robin in the
time.
Yeah.
There's always this big mystery.
of urgency throughout. But in the midst of that, it's the same beats.
into a familiar bubble. But
Yeah.
if you care...
Before we hop into this review, I wanted to say thank you to all who have been following us on the Stardust.
Here because in the first one probably will be a little bit lost, but visually it's great. Music's really happy in the first movie.
Why are you making him do this?
I know, but I just loved it. I thought he
Yeah.
was great in that.
didn't quite coalesce because he seemed...
Most people, but I thought Emily Blunt really made it her own in this movie.
It's kind of the putting on the accent thing again, just like Dick Van Dyke, because there's always been this thing.
Yeah.
One of my biggest pet peeves with movie musicals.
So it had me going, that's probably not his real accent. I remember a lot of the sequences there, but I don't really remember I've never heard
Passed away and he's all sad, and
You know, it's free to download, free to use, so do it today.
you can post your own reactions too.
One doesn't really have that. This one has the own and is great for this time.
Not like they're touching on, oh, he's overworked and has no time for his kids.
Spider-Verse, forget.
For his like short little appearance that he had.
normal for them, and like they're a pretty happy family. It's just that when the bank
At the same time, like,
I know.
like, oh my god.
Exactly. The whole like, hey, you
I
need
really loved her in this film. Like when she's on screen, she really commands it. She's great.
watching him, and I did feel the joy. The first musical bit,
be strict when she needs to be, but then also she can be very charming at the same. Is that just like Julie Andrews, she can be
case, but I do think that there are some
His
music
dialogue scenes, he kind of delivers.
the movie was keeping alive. To come back to Mary Poppins, I thought it was was really, really wonderful. And there's some movie like this is, will the music be as timeless and memorable as the original film's music is? All those elements really swept me up, really dazzled me.
For the overworked father who...
If it was about the dad, it would, because it's mostly CGI, that just becomes...
Amazing.
Yeah, I feel like the true stars of this movie for me were...
And he's really charming, even though he really is kind of a burnt knockoff.
A lot of this movie are the children.
He had any screen time.
Yeah, this is the choreography and the visuals.
Kind of hammier than everybody else in the movie.
Over there, we do 30-second reaction reviews for films, TV shows, and trailers. Or instead of them cleaning the room, they're going into a bathtub. And I remember...
It was still really charming.
It was.
You know?
I don't really remember the...
I am, yes.
Yes, she is. So go ahead, download the app. Follow us first.
Same in a lot of ways.
Although
yeah.
what I'll give it is that what they really added built off of your nostalgia factor for Mary Poppins. It really is.
It really is in that way.
Actually shot using set sound, so that actually helps in a number of
supplements for the characters from the original. Arguably, I think that's beat for beat the same movie.
Yeah, I'm not going to deny that. It's very much the same.
I thought that, yeah, some of his subtleties weren't that subtle. A lot of his delivery was
exactly that.
It really is. But
on stage more of
history to it. And I just really appreciate that Emily Blunt was able to sit back and see the important things in life. I think I just appreciated that it wasn't his wife, which was emotional.
Yeah.
I got a little
in the first movie.
Yeah.
I remember a lot of the imagery there.
Accent is not
It's not good.
It's not good.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I kind of got
every line the same way.
but I almost felt
I thought he did a great
back the tradition of these big, sweeping musicals.
about how much he misses his Lily.
All right, guys. Well, Mary Poppins
To adapt to the screen character, I did feel like he was perhaps the one element of the
song.
I don't either, because I realized that too. I didn't really walk out of there just
Mary Poppins Rises, the movie
was clearly used to be
just love the original.
to the first one. But in the middle of that, I mean, I still think, what's Ben Whishaw says this movie?
It's so Christopher Robin.
Yeah.
You must only watch, never post.
Lin-Manuel Miranda arguably gets more things to do than Mary Poppins.
Flop, 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 flop. Peep, peep.